They can't keep getting away with it.
I've noticed VR games come in one of a few conventions. The first two are either the most excessively realistic firearm you've ever operated, and the second is swinging a stick. It seems like when shit hits the fan, shit being my Knuckles controller, swinging and shooting are the go-to VR mechanics. The next convention is what I like to call real life, but cheaper. Driving, cooking, construction, you know, activities you could technically do in analog reality.
What? You think I can't woodwork? I've built a wall before.
My dad built a wall.
And I helped it, I'll prove it.
First off, you gotta build a frame. Then you fix your f***ups when you didn't measure it right. Add the plywood, trimming, bake it 450 for 18 minutes, choose an ugly dark green because you thought it looked cool at the paint store, and BAM! This is a pretty good wall if I say so myself. All that's left now is to dent it playing Beat Saber. So, guns, sticks, realism, then you have interactive movies. These will pretend to be a video game. They may even convince you they are one.
Gently now. Okay, alright.
When you first get a headset, these blow your mind, but eventually you notice they're mostly just glorified tech demos with way too much dialogue. Then you've got normal games which get a VR port later on. Aside from having a new way to buy Skyrim and a new way to not buy RE4, I don't really have a strong opinion on these. I play VR to experience the things I can't find anywhere else, you know, like sex, so naturally I'm drawn towards the things outside of these conventions. I mean, anybody can use a gun or a stick, but it's a lot harder to find experimental mechanics that only work well in this medium. For example, the real-world phenomena called echolocation is the process. Stifled was this 2018 stealth horror where you use sound to perceive the environment, mainly by throwing rocks, but if you have a microphone, you could also yell really loudly into it. It also supports VR, which they advertise with the cadence of a Windows firewall notice. Echolocation works really well when you have a physical play space to turn around in, and throwing objects fits perfectly into a control scheme built around physically swinging your arms. On paper, this should be like the definitive VR experience. It's got body immersion, depth perception, and non-conformity to conventions.
All you use your hands for is walking, which doesn't make sense. That's what feet are for.
The truth is, this is a really bad VR port. For starters, you pick up rocks by staring directly at them and pressing B. You also toss them by pressing B. 24 years of windmill exercises only for Stifled to give my upper body a rain check. You stealth around listeners by baiting them with sound. It's real scary. Makes me wish I had a soft miniaturized version of my own head to hold for protection. If only, right? Sometimes you're wading through inhabited waters to flip a switch or a lever, each footstep announcing your presence to whatever lies below. That's a quarter of the game, everybody. The rest is walking around a house.
Oh, my Doug Walker cosplay.
The movement, the mechanical depth, the story.
I can't even tell if this is part of the story anymore. I think the game's just actually broke.
Avoiding a pessimistic outlook, I'd describe this as delightfully undercooked.
Garlic powder.
I do think this concept of sound-driven design holds a lot of promise as a VR game. Throwing things, narrow spaces, horror elements, it's a great concept, but an iffy execution. I rate this Christmas with Weezer. Oh wait, they made a movement shooter. Well, in that case, Red. Also, the movement shooter died, so bingo. A few months later, this game called Blind releases. Totally different developer, but same idea. This one designed from the start for VR. Actual hand functionality, actual throwing stuff, and you get a whacking stick. Alright, that's pretty fun. What's weird is most of the game's puzzles, which is arranging gears and valves and clocks, there's a lot of arranging here, but not a lot of sound or physics related stuff. Not to misinterpret, there are tons of active listening mechanics, like memorizing a song, the beeps of a ventilator, some, You definitely listen a lot, but the echolocation ends up totally perfunctory to the rest of the game. You're barely ever throwing stuff. You can't pick up objects remotely, so you have to physically walk up to them, and even when you do, there's no storage system, so eventually your fingers get so tired of holding the controller, you just go back to whacking anyways. It's like being in an escape room with a flashlight you have to slam against a wall every 6 seconds. If you're gonna run with this blind concept, it'd be cool for it to be a main staple of the game. Let me throw rocks down holes. Let me toss an alarm clock on a pressure plate, and some enemy that chases sound runs after it. Something that facilitates the name of the game. Speaking of, you'd have to be blind to not pick up this music box. You wind it up to find tuning forks. It's a pretty clever sound puzzle about blending visible light and letting a Dark Souls hollow out from prison. Pretty much the only good sound puzzle in the game. The rest of it is a grimdark, unskippable cutscene which I spent dancing through, but basically your mom was abusive, so you Germaned her through a window, and now there's a sound demon chasing you in the last level, but wouldn't you believe it? Yep, it's blinder than a bat. No offense, Jeff. If Stifled took a great idea and did nothing with the concept, then Blind takes the same idea and uses it as a backdrop for completely irrelevant concepts. I rate it make-believe, not for any intrinsic reason, but because monochrome. It seems like the best mechanic here sat on a shelf for half the game. Speaking of sitting on a shelf... Check it out, I finished my Junji Ito collection. There's one story where a woman has sex with a house. It's pretty awesome. I forgot what we were talking about. Why'd you do that? Oh, the plush! The manually composited Bombi plush. Right. You want it. Right, yes. So no. Half-Life Alyx has some of the most thoughtful... Okay, fine. Take it. I was just trying to be funny. And by the way, you powder keg, I have to clean this glass up. It doesn't just disappear off screen. In fact, get sweeping. I don't have a dustpan either. Oh, and that was the last of my absolutes, so I hope it was worth it. I get it. It's a nice plush, soft but firm, limited time only, but you can't be blowing up over it. My wall smells like how Jeff Mangum sings. Thanks for the help, by the way. Now you are going to pay for that, right? Half-Life Alyx has some of the most thoughtful gun design in VR. The Half-Life shotgun, which was technically a two-handed weapon, plays here as one-handed. The gravity mechanic, which used to just click grab stuff, now requires the player to yank the object towards him and catch it. Reloading's become a manual action, movements built around teleporting. So much convenience of the previous games has become mechanically practical for immersion. However, a lot of things were cut which didn't translate well into VR. The iconic vehicle sections are too disorienting in a headset, so Alyx has to box you in every time you're in a moving object. There's been a downplay of the tightrope platforming from previous games. There's a lot less fast-moving enemies, combine pathing is different, less long-range combat. I don't think these things are gone for good, but they've probably been held off for a sequel while Valve fine-tunes them for this new medium. With the jump to VR comes a lot of trade-offs. Even the ammo system, as simple as reloading is a constant.
No more mags. I'm out. I'm out. Out of mags. I'm out. I'm out. Out of shells. Last 2 shells. Last 1. Out of mags.
Now, despite what you think, this is the most fun I've ever had in a game. At its best, it's setting a new industry standard, but at its worst, it's a litmus test for how willing you are to put up with a stop sign lodged inside a whack-a-mole machine. Even the best VR game is still bound by the conventions of its medium. Well, almost. There's actually one level which is an exception to this, and not so coincidentally, the most talked about level in its coverage. I'm giving you a warning before I spoil this to go play Alyx yourself, or skip it, or watch one of your internet pets play it, whatever fits the budget. Last chance, you ready? Okay, so the best level in Alyx is the explosive cave. No, I'm really gonna spoil this game now, though. I hit my fucking wall. So by this point in the game, you're used to shooting anything that moves. The story's been beelining like a tram ride throughout City 17's wreckage towards this floating vault at the city center. Then you get to Chapter 7 and the game's like, okay, flip script time, Russell can't talk anymore. Your guns, forget them. You're stuck in a distillery now, which is also home to a certain somebody.
Thanks. What the hell was that?
Oh, that's Jeff.
Right off the bat, the game conveys that Jeff sees around using his ears, and he also doesn't die to gunfire. There's also zero melee combat, not a crowbar, copper pipe, or frying pan throughout the entire game. What you do instead is a highly technical mechanic that I like to call yeet the wheat! You throw objects, you make sound, you got environmental puzzles, you got an object storage system. It's pretty much got everything those earlier games were missing, minus the visibility shtick. I actually think that gives them a bit of an edge on Alyx, but what they lack is a conducive environment. Open a cupboard too uncarefully and you'll hear... Act too slowly and a head crab will... No, stop. Why are you doing that? Why? Tell me. Use words. The only way to spin this valve, that's funny, is to bait Jeff into a freezer and then lock him inside it. But the only way to start the elevator is to open the freezer back up. I miss guns. This plays out like a sound and physics-driven horror stage, a 30-minute detour to what's an otherwise curated 12-hour experience. A lot of VR games are mechanically replicable on a 2D screen. Even most of Alyx is to some degree just a crosshair puzzle with nice environments. This is much harder to say for the distillery. Sometimes you've got to narrowly dodge around Jeff in a tight space, orient and guide objects in a particular motion, physically cover your mouth while throwing bottles around a corner. Things that would play out really finicky in any other medium besides this. It's on a very short list of only works in VR concepts. It feeds that primal urge you have when you're walking to the kitchen with a plate and you think, God, I just want to smash this against the pavement as hard as I can! I mean, I wouldn't do it. Not with the good plates. What a solid game. It's a real ultra ego out of a blue, you know? Innovative, but sort of an acquired taste. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Guns and sticks are cool, but I like the weird stuff sometimes too. And these are just like 3 examples, but there's a lot more out there, so feel free to recommend me stuff. Thanks for watching. The plushies are real. And instead of an end joke, I'm just gonna play us out. Justin's coming to tell you, banana soup, baby, do what you want.